Starting. All right, friends, Shana Tova, Gamar Chatima Tova. Thank you for joining us on Yom Kippur morning. We are going to begin on page 69. John Golding, our fabulous and fearless minion leader, he's leading every Monday and Thursday. I mean, amazing the amount of stuff he does for us. We'll also be leading this first part of the service, the very abbreviated Shacharit on Yom Kippur, page 69.
Oel tatzamot ozecha hagadol bikvot shemecha hagibor lanetzach v'hanora b'norotecha. Oh, 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 Melech Yoshev. Oh, 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 al kisei ram v'nisa shochen ad morom v'kadosh shemo וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני. לישרים נבע תהילה בפי ישרים תתרומם ודברי צדיקים תתבורך, ולשון חסידים תתקדש, ובקרב קדושים תתהלל, ובמחלות רבעות עמך בית ישראל. ורינה היית פרשן חמקנו בכל דור ודור, שוכן עובד כל היצורים, לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות לחלל, לשבח לפאר, לרומם להדר, לברך לעלה ולקלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות. דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודאות האדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אל חי העולמים. Bottom of page 70. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, והלמד יברח ירוצה, וימליך מלכותי. בחייכם וביומכם ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם, ולעלמי עלמיה. יתבורך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, V'yitadar, v'yitalei, v'yitalal, shemei kudisha. Barichu le'ela, le'ela, mikol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran v'alma v'imru omein.
Please rise for the Baruch Hu.
Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hapokeach lanu sharei rachamim uma'ir einei hamachachim lislichato yotzer or uvarei hoshech ose shalom uvarei et hakol or olam beotzar chaim orot me'ofel amar vayehi amen.
All right, we jump to the bottom of page 75.
האמור לעשות לרים גדרים כי לעולם חסדו, אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני, יוצר המאורות. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותורה חמלת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבחנו בך, אבינו מלכנו. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תחננו תלמדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו. ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד ולמד, לשמור ולעשות. ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והרהר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך, והנחינו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוכליכנו קוממות לארצנו. כי הפועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם פלשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע, סלע, סלע באמת, להודות לך, ולידך, ולידך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה.
Amen.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך
77.
בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, והיה... Then you silent. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים ללכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אמת. Top of page 80. תהילות ליל עליון Baruch hu Vorach Moshe ubnei Yisrael L'cha anu shira b'simcha rabba V'yamru kulam Mi chamolcha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamolcha nedar b'kodesh Nora tehilot Hosef ele Shira chadasha shivchu geulim L'shimcha sfat hayam Yachad kulam hodu v'imluchu v'yameru Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Sur Yisrael Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael Uvdei chinumecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzevot shemo Kadosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
We begin the Amidah out loud and together on page 252.
Ki Shem Adonai Akrav, Ogodel Eloheinu, Adonai Tzevatai Tifta, Ufi Agit Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov. Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Hasdei Avot, ומביא גואל לפני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מיסוד החמים ונבונים ומלמד דעת מבינים הבטחה פי בתפילה ובתחנונים לחלוד ולחנן פני מלך מלא רחמים מוחל וסולח לעוונים וזכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכתבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומק נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומחיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גיבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע. מי כמוך אב הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לך חיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
Amen.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. ואתה קדוש יושב, תהילות ישראל, תהילות ישראל, אל נא.
Page 257, the Kedusha.
ובכנו לך תעלה קדושה, כי אתה אלוהינו מלך מוכל וסולח. נריצך ונקדישך, כסוד צייה, שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכרזה אל זה ויאמר.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzva'ot, Melech Haaretz Kevodo.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו, כבודו מלא עולם. משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, האם מקום כבודו, ליומתם ברוך יאמרו.
Baruch Adonai Mimkomo.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, ממקומו הוא יפן ברחמים, ויחונם המייחדים שמו, ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים באהבה, שמע אומרים.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד, הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו, שנית לעיני כל חי, להיות לכם לאלוהים.
Ani Adonai Elohechem.
אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ויאמר אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ודברי כך כתוב לאמור.
Yimloch Adonai Le'olam, Elohai Tzion, L'dor Vador, Hallelujah.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד כאן לך, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, ושירכך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש
We continue on our own. Goes all the way through 271, or the actual more official version of the silent one goes from, you turn back in the page to page 215 through 221, but it's mostly the same material.
Sefer Chaim beracha v'shalom u'farnasa tova. Nizocher v'nikatev lefanecha. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
Amen. Yasher Koach. Well, we're continuing with Avinu Malkeinu, page 271. I would invite you all to please rise, and we call upon Sophie Posemantir and Talia Gordon to come open the ark.
Avinu Malkeinu chatana lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech ela ata. Avinu Malkeinu aseh imanu laman shemecha. Avinu Malkeinu chadesh aleinu shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Masim. Osei Imanu, Tzedakah v'chesed. Osei Imanu, Tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Masim. Osei Imanu, Tzedakah v'chesed. Osei Imanu, Tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Masim. Osei Imanu, Tzedakah v'chesed. Osei Imanu, Tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu.
The ark is closed. Kaddish Shalem, page 272.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליק מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן, יהי שלום רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. Yitborak v'yishtabak v'yitpoar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha barichu. Le'ela le'ela mikol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'yalema v'yimeru omein titkabel slothchon uvotachon Dechol Yisrael, Kadam Avon Vishmaya Ve'imaru Omein, Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya, Ve'chaim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imaru Omein, Ose Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, Ve'imaru Omein. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, Yasher Koach.
Baruch Tiyeh.
Thank you so much, John.
Baruch Tiyeh.
Greatly appreciate it.
Get out of your way, huh?
Just leave that thing there. All right, you can be seated, not for very long though. We're going to be on 274. We're going to be beginning the Torah service right away. Let's lower that. All right, so we're also now going to call to stand by the ark for carrying the Sifrei Torah. We call upon Liam and Gabriella Gordon. And I think this is a Jacqueline ark opening, so. Jacqueline and Sandy Margolin are kind of the on-call ark openers and other things. We didn't fill them all this year. We normally do teens, and then just because of the COVID stuff, it's a lot harder to figure that stuff out. So, in any case, Ein Kamocha, page 274.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'maasecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim Umemshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch Leolam vahed, Adonai hoz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, Av harachamim, Heitiva vertzoncha et Zion, Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, Ki vecha levad batachnu, Melech el ram v'nisa Adon olamim. Vayehi bin so Aharon vayomer Moshe Huma Adonai ve'afutzu oivecha ve'anusu misanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah ki mitzion Tetzei Torah udevar Adonai mi Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Le'amo Yisrael Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Bechanun, Erech Apayim, Verav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzeh Chesed La'alafim, ברוב חסדך. ענני, ענני, באמת ישך.
All right, the scrolls are now taken out of the ark. The ark is closed as the Shema is recited. 276.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'nora Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'nora Shemo.
Gadlu l'Adonai iti, u'niromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hahod. Ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz, ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, v'haminit na'aseh lechol erosh. Romemu, romemu,
Romemu,
Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu,
V'hishtachavu,
l'Adon rak kadoshu. Romemu, romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, v'hishtachavu, l'har kadsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
We may be seated. We are going to turn to page 278 for our Torah reading. The Torah reading comes from Leviticus 16, Parshat Achrei Mot. That's referring to after the deaths of Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu, but the Torah portion is mostly about the two goats brought on Yom Kippur for sacrificial offering, one offered directly up to God, the other sent off to wander into the wilderness, taking symbolically our transgressions with it. Of course, it ends up dying also if you read further in the Midrash, but in any case, it may be strange, but you can sense the drama of this particular ceremony as it's happening, and the massive atonement that Aaron is doing for all the people, with all the people gathered there. And so we have many teen readers and aliyot as well. So for the first Torah reading, 16, 1 through 6 on page 278, we call upon Aurora Dornhelm Campbell. And for the first aliyah, normally we only allow 2 people per aliyah, but because of COVID and trying to get everyone together, we happen to have one family who has 3 brothers, all of whom are aliyah age, who are post bar mitzvah. So we call upon Adi Arjun and Akash Bornstein.
V'yazor v'yagen v'yashilach chasim b'avan amar amen hakol havu gadel elhenu chavad la Torah yamdu Lebel v'Yakov Shalom v'Ram Dov B'nei David Meir Rishonim Bimkon Kohen Baruch Shanatan Torah Le'ama Yisrael B'Kedushato V'yatem Evikim B'Adonai Elohechem Chayim Kolchem Hayom.
Show them where to start. Do you see it? And one of you is going to hold on to your hair the whole time. Can you do that? All right. And touch with your tzitzit where she's showing you. And then together.
Barach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Cham Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bahar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe acharei mot shnei bnei Acharon v'korvatam lifnei Adonai vayamutu. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe daber el Acharon ahicha v'al yavo b'chol eit el hakodesh mi beit laparochet el pnei hakaporet Asher ha'aron v'lo yamut ki be'anan erahem el hakaporet v'zot yavo acharon el hakodesh b'far ben bakar lechatat v'yelelam ketonet bat kodesh yilbash u'michnasei vad yiyu al besaro uvavnet bad yachkor Uvmitzefet bad yitznof, bigdei kodesh hem, erachem b'mayim, et bizaro uvesham. Ume'et, adat b'nei Yisrael, yikach, shnei zirei izim lechatat, vayelech ad le'olam. V'hikriv acharon, et parachatat asher lo, V'hiper ba'ado uvad beito.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Hayei Olam Nata B'Tohenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Yashikoah. Second Aliyah on page 279. We call upon Amalia Dornhelm Campbell to read the Torah, and president and past president of our youth group, Dreidel AZA chapter, we call upon Avi Paulson and Nathaniel Ilfeld.
Yamdu, Avi ben David Udavora, Natanel ben Ephraim v'Yochana Sheni.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Atah Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Velakach et shnei ha'seirim, v'hemid otam livnei Adonai, petach ohel moed. V'natan Aharon al shnei ha'seirim goralot, goral ehad l'Adonai, v'goral ehad la'azazel. Ve'ikriv Aharon et ha'sair, asher ala alav hagoral Adonai, ve'asahu hatat, ve'hasair, asher ala alav hagoral azazel, ya'omad ha lifnei Adonai lechaper alav, l'shalachoto le'azazel hamid barach. V'hikriv Aharon et par chachatat asher lo, v'chiper ba'ado uvad beito, v'shachat et par chachatat asher lo.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yashakoach.
Beautiful, Aurora.
Susan Simon will read the third Torah reading. We call upon Ruby Sadekman. Is she here yet? She may not be here yet. Okay. Just in case she still may come, we're going to move some people around. So, is it Aaron Belikoff I saw? Why don't you take the third aliyah instead of the sixth one?
Ya'amod Aaron Reuven, Misha Chanan ben Miriam Mash, Shalishi.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ולקח מלוא המחתה, כך לאש, מעל המזבח מלפני אדוני, ומלוא כובניו, קטורת סמים דקה, והביא מבית לפרוכת, ונתן את הקטורת על האש לפני אדוני, וכיסה ענן הקטורת, את הכפורת, אשר על העדות ולא ימות, ולקח מדם הפר, והיזה באצבעו על פני הכפורת קדמה, ולפני הכפורת יעשה 7 פעמים מן הדם באצבעו, ושחט את שעיר החטאת אשר לעם, והביא את דמו אל מבית לפרוכת, ויעשה את דמו כאשר עשה לדם הפר, והיזה אותו על הכפורת ולבני הכפורת, וכיפר על הקודש מטומאות בני ישראל ומפשעיהם לכל חטאותם, וכן יעשה לאוהל מועד השוכן אותם ואיתם בתוך טומאתם, וכל אדם לא יהיה באוהל מועד בבואו לכפר בקודש עד צאתו, וכיפר בידו ועד ביתו ובעד כל ככל ישראל.
Yasher Koach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nota betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yasher Koach. Fourth aliyah now on page 280. We call upon Aaron Eliyahu to read the Torah. Is Simone Weiss here? Yes, for the fourth aliyah.
Talmud Simon bat Yeshua v'Malka Elisheva Revi'i.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ויצא אל המזבח אשר לפני אדוני וכיפר עליו, ולקח מדם הפר ומדם השעיר, ונתן על קרנו המזבח סביב, והזע עליו מן הדם באצבעו 7 פעמים, וציירו וקידשו מטומאות בני ישראל. וכילה מכפר את הקודש ואת אוהל מועד ואת המזבח, והקריב את הסיר החי, ושמח אהרון את 2 ידיו על ראש השעיר החי, והתוודה עליו את כל הבנות בני ישראל, ואת כל בשריהם לאכול אותם, ונתן אותם על ראש השעיר, ושילח ביד איש איתי המדבר, ונשא הסיר עליו את כל אבנותם לארץ גזרה, ושילח את השעיר במדבר. ובא אהרון אל אוהל מועד, ופשע את בגדי הבד, אשר לבש בבואו לקודש, ונחם שם. ובא אהרון אל אוהל... Where is that? ורחץ בשרו במים במקום קדוש, ולבש את בגדיו, ועשה תולתו ותולת העם, וכפר בעדו ובעד העם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach. For the 5th Aliyah, we call upon Rebecca Johnson to read the Torah, and we call upon Sarah and Lana and Tebi for the Aliyah.
תעמדו אלישבע בת ארי ודורית וחנה בת ארי ודורית, חמישי.
Starts with the 8.
The 8, Caleb Chachatot.
Not sure.
Are we in the right place? Is that, no?
We're on page 281.
The 8, Caleb Chachatot. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Did you touch and kiss yet? Sorry. Hold on.
Baruch et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ve'et chelev hachatat yaktir hamitzbecha. V'cham shalech et hasa'ir la'azazeh yichabes begardav. V'rhatze b'samo b'mayim. V'acharechein yavo hamachaneh. Ve'et par hachatat. Ve'et seir hachatat. Asher chuva et damam l'chaper b'kodesh. Yotzi machutz lamachaneh, V'sarfu va'esh et arotam v'apisaram v'apirsham. V'chasorei potam yichabes begardav v'rachatza misamo b'mayim v'acharechein yovo ahamachaneh. V'chayatel lachem lechukat olam b'chodesh hashvi b'asor lachodesh te'anu et noshotechem v'chol malacha lo ta'asu ha'ezra v'chager hagar b'tochechem ki vayom hazeh yichaper lechem l'tacher etchem mikol hatotechem lifnei Adonai titaru.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach. The sixth Aliyah we call upon Julia Johnson now to read the Torah. We call upon Ruby Sadikman for the Aliyah.
Ta'amod, Penina Aviva, Bat Yeshua Chaim, Vesara Rivka, Shishi.
Baruch hu et Adonai Amvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shabbat, Shabbaton hilahem v'initam et nashotehem ukat olam v'hiper hakohen asher yimshach oto v'asher yimalei et yado l'chahei tachar aviv v'lavash et bidei havad bidei hakodesh v'hiper et mikdash hakodesh v'et ohel moed v'et hamizbeach yehaper Ve'al kohanim ve'al kol am hakahal yaper v'hayatazot lahem lehukat olam lehaper al bnei Yisrael mikol hadotam achat bashana vayas kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yasher Koach. Actually, once again, I just want to just admire and say Yasher Koach to our amazing teenage readers. I mean, the skill level is just really phenomenal, and I think it's inspiring to all of us. You'll actually hear a little bit about why it's so good a little later on. Besides Susan Simon, our fabulous educational director. Other reasons too, you'll hear. All right, we rise for the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yikada v'yikada shemei rabba, v'yamad yivrach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechan uv'yomechan uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, bagala, uvizman karivimeru. Amen. Yeheshme rabba mevorach, li'olam ulal me'omaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemer kudashah.
Rechu.
Le'ela, mikol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran v'alma v'meru. Amen.
We remain standing for the Hagbah and Galil. I'm actually switching who's doing which one, so I'd like to invite, for the first Torah, we're going to invite brother and sister Noah and Milah Gammon to come lift and dress the first Torah.
Yamod, Magbia Tamod, Hagolelet.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Ota Torah, turn around. Asher Sa Moshe, turn around, yep. Bnei Bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai. Now we're going to walk to the chair here. Ad Moshe, over here. Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba'avetom Che'amen. Now go ahead and turn around and sit down. Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim. You can rest it on your legs. You can rest it on your legs. Rest it on your legs. Derachei Darchei Noam V'chol Netivotei HaShalom Derachei Darchei Noam V'chol Netivotei HaShalom Yai Lai Lai Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Lai. Yep, you can go back down. Right, Yasher Koach, we can be seated. Thank you, Milah, for visiting us from UC Santa Cruz. And Noah, working out with the Oakland Tech football team, able to do a fine Hagbah. He'd never done it before, but I figured he had the strength. But it's mostly technique, actually. All right, so we are now going to do the maftir, the additional offering brought on the holiday, the bottom of page 282. And Susan Simon will read the Torah. We call upon Charlotte Raganis for the Aliyah. She'll also be chanting the Haftorah.
Ta'amod, Shoshana Bat Liora, Hamaftir.
Hold on.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Uvesor LaChodesh HaShvi Hazeh Mikra Kodesh Yeh Lechem V'initem et nafshotechem Kol melacha lo tasu V'yikrabtem olah l'Adonai Reach nichoach Par ben bakar Echad ayil echad Kvasim b'nei shana shiva Tamimim yulachem
ומנחתם סולת בלולב השמן, 3 עשרונים לפר, 2 עשרונים לילה אחד. יסרון לכבש האחד, לשבעת הכבשים, סיריזים אחד חטאת, מלבד חטאת הכיפורים ויולד התמיד, ומנחתה ונזקיהם. Touching this.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Inclusive blessing for all who read. Misha Berchavatenu Avraham Yitzhak Yaakov Sarav Karachav Aleya Hivrech Korkarim Asher Luhayom Likvod Hamakom Likvod HaTorah Likvod Yom Hadin HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishmor Tam Bit Kol Mishpachtam V'Yishlach Hatzcha B'Chol Masei Yedeim V'Yichtavtem V'Yachtemem L'Chaim Tovim B'Zei Yom Hadin Im Kol Yisrael Achechem V'Achotehem V'Nomar Amen. And we're thinking especially today of those who are ill, including Scott Lawrence, Dahlia Bat Razel, Hazlan Shlomo Natan Ben Nechama, Barbara Rose, Lou Burrow, Ilya Oak, Karina Gola Bat Hadav Yehuda Tzvi, Leah Bat Shena, Shabtai Dov Ben Shimon Moshe, Manuel Ben Sarah, Ray Ranshaw, Missy Rosen, Albert Alter, Rosie Gurman, Leah Bat Shimon Lazar, Bob Rasters, Justin Hardy, Yechiel Ben Eliza, Eva Abrams Heimowitz, Martin Rosenthal, Shulamit Bat Leah, Miriam Bat Yehudit, Adele Mendelson, David Snyder, Marina Gottschalk, Carmel Oria Bat Ariel Sara, Leah Bat Fredela Vazalman. If you have any other names of those who are ill, please just go ahead and say them out loud at this time. Yishaberach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak V'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel V'Leah U'Yivarech V'Yirapeh et HaCholim El Narifana Lahem El Narifana El Narifana Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak V'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel V'Leah U'Yivarech V'Yirapeh et HaCholim. May God bless and heal all those who are ill. May we continue to be with them in their time of need. We once again rise for the Haggadah and Galila. We call upon Stephen Susan Shub.
Yamad Hamagvia Tamad Hagolelet.
Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. All right, we may be seated as we turn to the Haftarah, which comes from Isaiah. It's on page 284, Isaiah chapter 57. It's a classic Haftarah of both chastisement and comfort. Isaiah telling the people that the fasts are meaningless unless they're accompanied with an understanding of helping those in need and the poor. And yet, eventually, there will be a highway, a new road, and light will shine on the people. So Charlotte will lead us or chant the Haftarah for us, page 284.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher barcha b'nviim tovim v'ratzah v'tifrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo ובישראל עמו, ובנביאי האמת והצדק. ואמר סולו סולו הנו דרך, הרימו מלשון מדרך עמי, כי כה אמר רם ונישא, שוכן הד וקדוש שמו, Marom v'kadosh eshkon, v'yetaka ushva ruach, l'hachayot ruach shefalim, ul'hachayot livnit gayim, ki lo le'olam ariv, ve'lo lanetzach exov, ki ruach milfanai atov, unshamot ani asiti, Bavon bitzo, kazavti ve'akehu hazter v'ksov, ba'elech shovav b'derech libo, derachav rayiti verpa'ehu, v'yanchehu, v'ashaylem nichumim, lo ve'lav ve'lav, Borei niv sefatayim, shalom shalom larachok v'lakarov. Amar Adonai orfativ v'hashayim keyam nigrash, ki hashkeit lo yuchal v'grishu meimav refesh fatis. Ein shalom Amar Elohai Larshaim, Kira Vegaron al Tachsoch, Kashofar Harem Kolecha, Vehaged Leami Pisham, Uveit Yaakov Chatotam, Vioti Yom Yom Yidroshu, Veda'at Erachai Echbatzun, Kegoy asher tzedakasa, umishpat Elohav lo azav, yishaluni mishpatei tzedek, kirvat Elohim yachbatzun, lama tzamnu velo rayita. Sorry. Indinu. Ininu nafshenu velo teda, ein beyon tochem tin suchefet, vechol atzvechem tin gosu, ein leriv umatzat tatsumu, ulahakod begro fresha, lo tatsumu chayom, lahashmiya bamarom kolechem, hachazeh. Yehi yetzom evcharehu yom anot adam nafsho halachov kegamon rosho v'sach ve'efer tigratzon veyom rafson ladonai hadlozeh somev karehu pateach hartzubod resha hater agudod motah Veshalach ritzitzim chovshim vechomotat tenateku hadlo faros lereyev lachmecha ve'aniyim mirudim tavivayit ki tirech aron v'chisito umibasaracha lo titalam az yevaka kashachar orecha ve'aruchatecha mehera titzmach ve'chalach lifanecha tzidkecha kevod Adonai ya'asfecha az tikra Adonai yaneh tishava ve'omar hineni im tasir mitochecha motah shelach etzba v'daber aven ותפק לרעב נפשך, ונפש נענה תשביע, וזרח בשחך אורך, ואפלתך כצהריים, ונכך אדוני תמיד, והשביע בסכסכות נפשך, ועצמותיך יחלית. והיית כגד רבה וכמוצא מים אשר לא יכזבו מימיו ובנו ממך חורבות עולם מוסדי דור ודור תקומם וקורא לך גדר פרץ משובב נתיבו לשבת אין תשיב משבת רגלך, הסוד חפציך ביום קודשי, וקראת לשבת עונג, לקדוש אדוני מכובד, וכיבדתו מעשות דרכך, ממצוא חפצך ודבר דבר. אז תתענג על אדוני, והרכבתיך על במותי הארץ, והאכלתיך נחלת יעקב אביך, כי פי אדוני דיבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם. כי המלך נאמן ברחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי היא בית חיינו, ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה וימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון בפניך. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו, ואליהו הנביא עבדך, ומלכות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגר ליבנו, על כיסאו לא ישב שר, ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו, כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום הכיפורים הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, למחילה לסליחה לכפרה לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו modim lach u'mevarechim otach. Yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed. Udvarecha mit v'kayam la'ad. Baruch atah Adonai. Melech mochel v'saleach la'avonotenu v'la'avonot amo beit Yisrael u'ma'avir hashmotenu b'chol shana v'shana. Melech hakol ha'aretz mekadesh Yisrael. Melech hakol ha'aretz mekadesh Yisrael. Melech hakol ha'aretz mekadesh Yisrael. Le'yom
Amen. Yasher Koach. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Beautifully done. Before we turn to our Yizkor service, we're going to call upon our member of the Board of Trustees, who's going to share a few words with you. This is known as the High Holiday Appeal as well, but you know there's no cards or anything, so we're not collecting anything today. But in any case, we call upon a longtime member, past treasurer of the congregation, member of the Board of Trustees, Shomer Gabay, and four-time Jeopardy champion, but he was never asked to try out for host. And after today, you may want to write the producers. All right, thank you. John Jacobs.
Thank you, Rabbi. After today, you may find out why I was not asked. All right. Good morning. Boker Tov. So nice to be outside in the fresh air today. I remember when I was a kid, when the weather was nice, we all wanted to have shul outside. And now we do. That's a sort of a Yiddish pun. But if you have to explain it, it wasn't funny. So my grandmother grew up in one of those crossroads of Europe kind of places, and she spoke several different languages. English was actually the last one she learned, yet she could make puns in it. Grandma, how do you feel? Mit mein fingers. As you see, she could also make Yiddish jokes. English. All right. As you see, she could also make dad jokes with a Yiddish accent. That's better. Your accent, the way you pronounce things, often marks where you learn to talk and can say a lot about you. Like, for example, a Sephardic versus an Ashkenazic accent. And it can limit the sounds you can make, the things you can say. As you may know, there are two closely related Hebrew letters, the shin and the sin, written the same, except one is a dot on the left and one is a dot on the right. One is pronounced sh and one is pronounced s, an s. You saw a couple people up here earlier flanking the Torah called shomrim, or guardians. It means something different in Cleveland now. But they were flanking the Torah readers to assist them because the Torah is not easy to read. There's no vowels, no dots. When Rabbi Bloom first came to TBA, he told the shomrim, make sure people don't confuse those two letters. That's because in the book of Judges, there's a story about a battle between the Ephraimites and the people who lived in Gilead. Gilead was on the east side of the Jordan River, and the Ephraimites had to cross the Jordan for the battle, and then they lost. Then the Gileadites blocked the river crossings, and they made anyone who wanted to cross say a password, Shibboleth. It starts with the letter shin, and according to the internet, it means an ear of grain. But the Ephraimites' accent didn't have the sh sound in it. They couldn't make it. They could only pronounce a s sound. Like the way some people who grew up speaking English cannot make a ch sound. Well, when the Gileads heard anybody say Sibelet when they were trying to cross the river, they killed him. Nobody could cross the river unless they were able to go forth and sin no more. Okay, once more unto the speech, dear friends, once more meaning let's get on with it. Now, I used to have an accent, but when I went to college and in the moving around after that, I lost most of it. My sister-in-law was visiting us earlier in the summer, and I said something about getting a glass of water. She said, wow, you have a Delco accent. You must have lived in Delco, and I didn't know where she was coming from. It was something to do with a TV show called Mayor of Easttown. Maybe some of you have heard of it. And it's set outside of Philadelphia, which is where I grew up. Now, there are some things, some parts of the way I speak that I just can't get rid of. It must have been in the water. But I spent a dozen years in the Midwest after leaving Philadelphia and eventually came here, so I'm kind of like the A's. But I digress. Jan Kessler talked last year about having been part of a still being part of a five-generation TBA family. That's why she was talking about the endowment last year and having a stake in TBA. My wife, Joy, and I are the first generation of our family to be TBA members. That's a difference between Jan and me. No other visible ones, of course. Now, here's another difference. Last year, Jan said that she had never really wanted to give the appeal to make this speech because she was uneasy talking to large groups. Not me. I don't mind talking to large groups. In a lot of ways, I'm more shy speaking to someone one-on-one. And this way, I get to talk without having to listen to what anybody else has to say. It's a guy thing. But you know what's the best part about making this appeal? It's easy, because everybody wants me to succeed. Look around you. Look at the people next to you, the people in front of you, the people behind you. And if you're at home, think of all the people you see here when the camera pans the crowd. Don't you really want me to be successful in getting them to give money? Don't you really want them to be the ones to support the synagogue, the endowment fund, the general fund? Well, I really should. Okay, let's start. When Joy and I moved here, the congregation was running on a sort of a hand-to-mouth basis, or pay-as-you-go. That sounds better. And just about the first thing I had to do when I was treasurer was set up a special fundraising appeal because our then rabbi was leaving, and we thought we'd need a cushion in case donations fell off. Since that time, TBA has been fortunate. We've been building reserves for the last fund, specifically supports education aimed at interfaith families and couples. The Rear Davis Teen Fund supports activities for Jewish teenagers here and in the community, even including BBYO and confirmation. Those are the restricted funds. And if you haven't taken good notes, have no fear. I think the list will be reprinted in the Omer. Now, these funds were established for specific purposes on which to spend the money. The Board of Trustees is responsible for managing the money in them, sometimes taking in more, figuring out how much is available, and making sure the money gets spent. On each fund's restricted purpose, yes, but spent nonetheless. Now, you may ask yourself, who are these trustees? And if we were upstairs on the bima, I could just wave at them behind me, but not today. So I have to list them. They are President of the Board of Trustees, Jan Kessler, Secretary Vicki Zatkin, past President and past President of Beth Abraham, Chuck Bernstein, Jerry Hertz, Alan Silver, Joel Pizer, Howard Zangwill, Eric Lev, and little old me. Now, the trustees also manage an unrestricted fund, the Endowment Fund, the Quitman Endowment Fund. Beth Abraham's endowment is supposed to help TBA through thick and thin as necessary. That's what makes it unrestricted. That's what makes it unrestricted, to establish a secure foundation. For example, when I was TBA treasurer back around the turn of the century, I always thought it'd be cool to be able to do that, to talk familiarly about the turn of the century, but I digress. For example, when I was treasurer, I had to ask every year for money from the endowment fund to help balance the budget. Those days are fortunately gone. The endowment still supports TBA programs, giving money to the operating fund in case of COVID needs, or a cushion in case donations should fall off due to COVID or due to the end of COVID, as well as substantial contributions to our building projects over the last 15 or 20 years. The trustees are responsible for managing both the restricted funds and the endowment fund. That means spending the money, and I've talked about that. When I was listing the restricted funds, I talked about that, and we're obligated to spend that restricted money. But you can't spend money you don't have, so it also includes preserving and growing what we have. If someone makes a legacy gift, and I don't know about you, but I've been getting a lot of mail from charities lately about setting up legacies. They must think I'm old just because I like the phrase turn of the century. If someone leaves money to the congregation in their will, which is what we mean by a legacy gift, without creating or specifying a restricted fund or other specific use that goes into the endowment. And that's great. And I'm sure we'd be happy to help set you one up, to help you set one up. To help you set one up. But we don't want to be depending on and waiting for people to die, especially not your friends, your associates, the people sitting in front of you or back of you, around you. So every year, we wind up right at this point. And it all comes down to somebody up here asking you for money. And not just asking the people with money for money, but asking everybody for something. Because when you make a contribution, you're actually buying in. You can exchange that contribution for a piece of this place, these people, this group of people, and such a deal. You wouldn't, you shouldn't, you couldn't get such a deal. But you can. Hopefully, becoming a little more committed to Beth Abraham and the Jewish future in Oakland and in the wider world. The Board of Trustees usually talks and thinks mostly about the Endowment Fund, but I'm actually here for two purposes. Two for one. You can't resist. I'm asking you to give to the TBA General Fund, the dollars that support the synagogue's present, or to the Endowment Fund, whose mission is to ensure the synagogue's future, or both. Now, you may ask yourself, and I really should have a bigger jacket for doing this, sort of like David Byrne, right? Why are they doing this when I just got the appeal in the mail a couple of weeks ago? And yourself could probably answer, because, statistically speaking, you did not respond to that appeal in the mail. That's why we're here asking you to do it now. Well, not exactly right now. We're not going to have people collecting pledge cards this year. We don't want you writing out checks during Yom Kippur, but tonight or tomorrow or next week, go to oakland.org/appeal. Don't you write that down now. Or just go to tbaoakland.org and click on it in the giving menu, and shout out to Garrett Schwartz for setting that out. Or send a check or a pledge to the TVA office. Say how much you want to give or pledge to the Endowment Fund, how much to the General Fund, or call the office when it's open. Talk to Raina or Virginia or our new bookkeeper, Pablo, and tell them how much you want to give. And tell them your name and your address or phone number if you're not a member, so we can gently remind you. Now, next year, I expect we'll all be back here in this general area, and I'll see you once again, except I'll be sitting down, and it'll be someone else's turn next year. Thank you for allowing me to ask this of you. Tzom Kal, you should have an easy fast. Gemar Tov, you should finish for good. And Lishana Haba'ah, inside. Thank you.
So there's an off button. Thank you. All right, thank you so much, John. Our next Jeopardy host. All right, we are now going to do our Yizkor service. So we're going to turn to page 290. 290. Just a moment. A couple things to straighten out here. Okay, so at this time, like I said, page 290, I'd like to invite Daniel Shotland and Jerry Levine to come up and hold Sifrei Torah for our Yizkor service. Both had significant loss in the past year. Daniel's sister dying all too young, and Marvin Sandy are here too, and our thoughts continue to be with you, and Jerry's mom, and they will be holding up the Torah as the Torah upholds them. So you can go ahead and take those now. And we rise as some of us recall parents who watched over us, nursed us, guided us, and sacrificed for us. Some of us lovingly call to mind a wife, a husband, or a partner with whom we were truly united in our hopes and our pains, in our failures and our achievements, in our joys and our sorrows. Some of us remember brothers and sisters who grew up together with us, sharing in the play of childhood and the youthful adventure of discovering life's possibilities, bound to us by a heritage of family tradition and by years of togetherness and love. Some of us call to mind children entrusted to us too briefly, to whom we gave our loving care and from whom we received a trust that enriched our lives. So many of us recall beloved relatives and friends whose affection and devotion enhanced our lives and whose visible presence will never return to cheer, encourage, or support us. And though they are gone, we are grateful for the blessings they brought to our lives. We are sustained and comforted by the thought that their presence in our lives remains an enduring blessing that we can bequeath to others. We can show our devotion to them by our devotion to those ideas that they cherished. O God of love, make us worthy of the love we receive by teaching us to love you with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our might, and to spread the light of your divine love on all whose lives touch ours. Give us strength to live faithfully, for we are cheered by our confidence that you will not permit our lives to be wasted, but will bring all our worthy strivings to live on, even as we may not see their fulfillment. We continue now in private meditation, page 291, remembering specifically all the people who you've come to say the Yizkor prayers for today. 291. Yizkor Elohim, Nishmot Yedidenu, Chevre HaKahal HaKadosh Hazeh Shalchu Le'olamam. We remember the souls of some of the members and relatives of this congregation who have passed away during this last year. Thinking of Dina Aronson, John Myers-Alswang, Simi Baum, Francis Block, Lubin Calabio, Jack Coulter, Edith Denenberg, Sally Disco, Helen Golden, Alan Green, Samuel Jackson, Larry Kaufman, Erwin Kanan, Edna Levine, Pablo Macias, Brenda Hillary Maltz, Judy Maslia, Sadok Maslia, Sid Rose, Ellen Rubin, Aviva Rachel Shotland, Lou Shotland, Charles Sims, Gloria Sims, Andy Simonoff, and Marvin Spielman. May they rest in peace forever in God's presence, as we say, Amen.
Amen.
All right, at this time, I'd like to invite up Judy Bloomfield. Going to be on page 292. She's going to chant the El Malei Rachamim for the 6 million who perished. Looks bigger.
El Malei Rachamim
שוכן במרומים. המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קרושים וטהורים כזוהר כי המזהירים. לנשמות כל אחינו בני ישראל שנטבחו בשואה. אנשים, נשים וטף שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו, שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם בגן עדן תמנוחתם. אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם ואנוכו ושלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר אמן.
Shekoach. And now on page 293, the El Malay for all who perished.
El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hametzeh Menucha Nechona Tach במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים. לנשמות כל אלה שהזכרנו היום לברכה, שהלכו לעולמם בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם. אנא בעל רחמים הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו ושלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר אמן.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, whose radiance is like the heavens, to the souls of all those we've recalled today. May their memory be a blessing, and may they rest in paradise. Master of mercy, may they find eternal shelter beneath your sheltering wings, and may their souls be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. Adonai is their portion, may they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Amen. Psalm 23, which I do in Old English with the he's and everything, in honor of my teacher, Rabbi Herbert Morris, also is the father of our executive director, Raina Arnold. We honor his memory. Adonai roi lo echsar, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedechol beit Yisrael. Bagala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivorach leolam olomei almaya. Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'itpa'ar v'itromam v'itnaseh. V'itadar v'itale v'talal. Shemei dekudsha barichu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Oseh shalom bimroma, huya se shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Zichronam livracha, may the memory of all these special people that you gathered here today to remember bless you always, and let us say Amen. We can put the Torahs down, the Sifrei Torah down. Now, because it's Yizkor, and I didn't ask the teens who were here to leave, but some of them did anyway. And if there are any teens here, I know there's a few of you. I know normally this is a 7th and 8th grade thing, but if you are anything 7th through 12th, I'd like you to come up for Ashrei now to the main table. Thank you so much for those who are here. Keep your masks on, and don't worry about microphones. We can't really hold it close to any of you. Just do the best you can. If you're watching at home, it's possible that Josh will turn on the external microphone to that camera, so you'll sort of be able to hear. But if you're in the back on the grass, you probably won't be able to hear. Page 295, please be seated. Ashrei ha'am shekach lo, Ashrei ha'am sh'Adonai Elohav. Bechol yom ha'brachecha, v'ala shimcha le'olam va'ed. V'yor shalach ma'asecha, u'toratecha yakidu. Jesus Narotecha Yomeru, Rubatecha Sabrena, Zegavav Vayakidu, Etichachma Yoreinu, Kanu Barakum Adonai, Erechamayim Yom Hasem, Tovelo Yaakov, Kavakakol Machsa, Yochana Kumasecha, V'chasidacha Yimerkucha, Kevod Mahutora Yomeru, Rubatecha Yomeru, So we're about to return the Sifrei Torah to the Ark. Before we do that, I just want to, I want to say Yasher Koach to Judy Bloomfield for leading us in El Malay for the 6 million. And I just want to say how pleased I am that one of our Holocaust survivors was able to make it here today. So Helen Fixler is here in the back by the sign. And Helen, we're so happy, so happy that you are here. So thank you. Helen, we're introducing you. So anyway, thank you, Helen. And she's standing up, so thank you. She's waving. Thank you, Helen. We're just saying hi. All right, anyway, we're now going to rise for the return of the Sifrei Torah to the Ark. We call upon E.J. and Zeke Miller to carry the Sifrei Torah and Noah and Zaya Lindenbaum to open the Ark.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai ki nizkar mo levado hodo al eretz v'shamayim vayarem keren leyamo tila lechol chasidav livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, le David mizmor. Seu she'arim roshechem vehinastu pirchei olam. Ve'yavo melech hakavod, hakavod. Mi ze melech hakavod, mi ze melech hakavod. Adonai izuz ve'gibor, Adonai gibor milchama. Seu she'arim roshechem, useu pirchei olam. Ve'yavo melech hakavod, hakavod. Mihu ze melech hakavod, mihu ze melech hakavod. Adonai tzevaot, hu melech hakavod. Selah, uvnucho yomar. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tom he'a meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol voteha Shalom, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekem.
Amen. Yasher Koach, and we may be seated. You can close your books for a few moments. I'm just going to give it a sec.
Sorry.
Give it a few moments while some of the Yizkor people come back in. Had I told them in advance, we could have had a massive ashrei here, but, you know. Oh, do the ashrei again? Yeah. When you walk through the storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. The end of the road, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver sound of the lark, sweet silver song of the lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams may be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you will never walk alone. We concluded Erev Rosh Hashanah with the singing of this song, thanks to the help of Tori and Paulo. We're not going to reprise it quite that way today. The idea being that, the theme being that life is a journey and that you never have to be alone on your journey. A couple of fun facts about that song. It comes from the musical Carousel, 1945, Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's actually sung when one woman is trying to comfort another after the tragic loss of her husband. It was adopted by the Liverpool Football Club, the soccer team, in the early 1960s when they installed a PA system in their stadium. And they would play the top 10 hits of the day each week. And one of the hits was a remake of You'll Never Walk Alone by a Liverpool band called Jerry and the Pacemakers. And the team was so bad that year that the song resonated. They said, we're going to lose a lot of games, but at least we'll be in it together. And if you've ever seen, I've never seen it live, but seen the fans, tens of thousands of people screaming like only British soccer fans can at the top of their lungs, this beautiful song to each other, You'll Never Walk Alone. It's really something to behold. I found a Hebrew song, an Israeli song, by, God, I'm forgetting his name now, Yigal Ben Ari, I believe, called Never Alone, Af Pa'am Lo Levad. Similar lyric and similar message. The chorus goes something like this in English. Though the sun will run and hide away, you'll still see it shining through the chasm, and we're glad it's hiding for the moment. You'll still see it shining through the chasm, and you'll wake up and you'll be whole again. And you'll be able to spread your wings, only don't be afraid. You're never alone. Al tifchad af pa'am lo levad. Now, continuing this theme of our journey, last night, for the few of you who got to be here or those who might have seen it on the YouTube, I took us on a very dark part of the journey, talking about the rise of anti-Semitism. And the phrase that I kept repeating was Am levavad yishkon, we're a people who dwell alone. And today, the phrase is going to be Af pa'am lo levad, you're never alone. Now, I realize that, of course, is a contradiction, right? Last night I told you, basically, we're always alone, we're a people who dwell alone, and today, it's you're never alone. So, which is it? Well, first of all, you have to be comfortable with contradiction. Number one, because we're a conservative Jewish congregation. Secondly, because all our journeys are filled with all kinds of contradiction, right? That's called being human. But if Judaism were to take a vote, Judaism would emphasize that really we are never alone. Because Judaism is a religion and a culture that's all about community. Like for other religions, you may imagine a person praying, silently meditating in a field. Now, you can do that in Judaism. That is a part of Judaism. But probably when you're thinking of Judaism, religiously, you're thinking of the idea that you need 10 people to gather together to say certain prayers. That's the concept of a minyan. And culturally, you're thinking of big family dinners, tons of people, loud, arguing, debate. Community, being together, is really everything in Judaism. And that's true even when we transgress, even when we miss the mark. The prayers that we say, the confessionals, they're all plural. They're all we. Al chet shechatanu lifanecha. For the sin or transgression or missing the mark, however you want to translate it, that we have committed. Ashamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu, not ashamti, bagadati, gazalti. It's we abuse, we betray, we have been cruel. And the Torah portion we read about the scapegoat. You have this odd ceremony with the goats, but the whole community's there gathering around, and the high priest is atoning not just for himself, he's atoning for the entire community. And then the Haftorah that we're going to read later this afternoon, not the one that Charlotte so beautifully read, but the one that's going to be read later by Maya. Jonah, the story of Jonah. It's basically the story of a person trying to flee his responsibilities to the community. He's told to go to a community, the Ninevites. He's not told to repent himself. He's told to tell the community to repent. But he flees. He can't run from God. He's swallowed by the giant fish to teach him that you really can never evade or avoid your communal responsibilities. Because community is everything in Judaism. Af pa'am lo levad. For better and worse, we're never alone. Now, I did mention on Rosh Hashanah, this year we've had more than our share of tragic young death. That's even more true in the general world. And I'm looking across the courtyard, and I'm looking at the name Murray Davis. This is the Murray Davis courtyard. He also died a relatively young and tragic death. He had a heart attack while vacationing in Hawaii. He was in seemingly perfect health. I want to tell you just for a moment, I digress just for a second about Murray, for those who don't know him and why it's called the Murray Davis Courtyard. I mean, of course, it's called that way because his family were the seed donors for this courtyard. But Murray was really one of the most magnetic personalities you'll ever meet. I mean, he was, just an extremely charismatic guy, a kind guy, very philosophical, very handsome. Everyone wanted to be around him. And he was also the heart and soul of our rock and roll Shabbat. He was the lead guitar player. He wrote music. He produced an album. And the reason why we hardly ever have them anymore is because it's just never been the same without Murray. We just miss him terribly. And I, as a personal friend, I miss him terribly. And the thing was, the hole that is in that family's life and the other families that I alluded to on Rosh Hashanah, that pain never goes away. Right? There's always a scar there. You don't always remember that you have a scar there, but when you rub on it, it hurts. But what I can tell you was that in the case of all these families, the fact that the community was there for them made them feel less alone. Doesn't take away the pain, but it takes away the loneliness. Af pa'am lo levad. We're never alone. So when I send out, I'm going to have a bunch of requests actually in this sermon to different constituencies in this congregation. When I send out that Kol TBA email that says there's a Shiva at such and such a time and a place, or a virtual Shiva, the main reaction would be, okay, I'm glad, my sympathies with the family. I didn't know that family, so I'm not going to go. But I would suggest that if you have the time or the inclination, you should go, whether you know a family or not. Some of those families, right, the Shivas are very well attended. Some of them are not. Now, I know it seems odd. I don't know the family. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. It's traditional to bring food, but you don't have to bring food. You don't have to say anything. And never, ever worry that you're going to say the wrong thing. They are not going to remember what you said, I promise. Okay? If they remember anything, they'll remember that you showed up. And you know what? They probably won't remember that either. But that's okay, because it's not about you. It's about you making them feel less alone for a moment in time. Af pa'am lo levad. You're never alone. The same thing applies at the other end of the life cycle. We try to build community here at Temple Beth Abraham from the very beginning. And if you're lucky enough to be in the preschool, Gan Avraham, you kind of get it automatically because you're going through all the same things as families that all the other people are. It gets more challenging as the kids get a little older. But we try really hard in the religious school as well, in our Beit Sefer, which I think Susan Simon, who does a fabulous job, is entering her 20th year now running our Beit Sefer. So Yasher Koach to her. I have two main goals for our religious school. Two main important goals. And both of them are essentially about community. Now, the first one you wouldn't think it is, but it is. The first one is I want our kids to graduate with a whole bunch of skills, like learning to read Hebrew to decode and knowing a whole bunch of prayers. That incredible Torah reading that you saw today, our teens are amazing at it because we emphasize it. We want them to know how to chant Torah. We want them to know trope. We want them to know Musaf. We want them to know Torah service. We want them to know the Friday night prayers. We do all these things that are very traditional, old-fashioned. Some would say rote learning in this day and age. And the answer is yes, that is one of the most important goals of our religious school. Because by the time they leave our program, I want our students to be comfortable at any Jewish community in the world. I want them to be able to walk in a synagogue in Israel, France, England, Germany, Brazil, East Coast, West Coast, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and know what they're doing. Feel comfortable. Because I want them to be part of the world Jewish community. And that's why we emphasize that. A lot of schools don't do it that way, but we do. The second goal is I want them to make friends. I want them to have a Jewish peer community. We try to teach other things, right? We teach life cycle and holidays and Bible stories. I don't know if they retain any of it, to be honest, but we teach it anyway. But that's all secondary to those two main goals of being part of the world Jewish community by learning a whole bunch of prayers and building their own Jewish community of friends. Now, I've got an ask for that too. Parents, you have to help us out because it's a lot harder in religious school. They don't go to the same schools. They come from all kinds of different places. It's hard for them to get to know one another in a couple hours. So if you can get them together outside of class, the kids they don't know I'm talking about, play dates, sleepovers, meetups at services, hangouts, whatever you call it at the particular age that your kid is, please encourage that and do that. In 7th grade, we take it up a notch. We have the Bar Bat Mitzvah program. We bring the day school kids back. Some of them don't appreciate that, but we do it to keep building the community. Every kid is required to invite every other kid, not just to their Bar Bat Mitzvah service, but to the party. So again, we can continue the socializing, the bonding. Does it work in all cases? No. There are some kids who never feel the fit, but it works in a lot of cases. And then they go to high school, and it gets even more difficult because not only are they at all these different schools, but now they've got a soccer team. I mean, they had that in elementary school, but it's more, right? It's 5 days a week now. Soccer, swimming, Model UN, debate, volleyball, 6 AP classes at a time some of our kids take. That's not a joke. They actually do that. And it's hard to keep them together, but we try. We've got a 8th, 9th, and 10th academic program, and we've got youth groups, BBYO, Oakland BBG, and Drail AZA. And parents, I need you to encourage your kids to go to that, and more than once, because it doesn't always take the first time. And by encourage, I mean force, bribe, pay, whatever it is. Because the benefits of having a Jewish peer community, especially as a teenager, are lifelong and incredibly important. Last year, during the anti-Semitism increase, Dre DeLazier had this Zoom call, and I peeked in a couple times watching my son Jonah with the other kids on the call. And I mean, they were looking at some of the most vile things on social media, as I talked about last night, but they were able to process it together, to share their experience, even in their sadness. It was really impressive. Most of the time, they're not so serious, okay, and they do what teenage kids do. But really, to have that peer community, it once again lets them know, af pa'am lo levad, that they're never alone. One of the most horrific things about COVID is that it is a disease that's anti-community. It isolates us. And as I've just been explaining, community is everything in Judaism, and that's especially true of Temple Beth Abraham, not only in our youth community, not only at the end of life, but in everything. Our kiddush lunches, our social events, our intergenerational friendships, right? This is everything at Temple Beth Abraham. And for the last year and a half, it's the engine that drives us, and we've been running on the fumes of that engine. But I kind of feel like it's the Hanukkah miracle. We only had enough oil to last for one day. It lasted for 8. We only had enough oil for this engine to last for a couple months, and it's lasted for 18. But don't kid ourselves. It's sputtering, and it's spitting, and we have to rebuild it slowly but surely. And I hope that all of you will continue to help us do that as we continue with that af pa'am lo levad, that message of you're never really alone. Now, I want to conclude with 2 final stories, which takes us slightly away from that community theme and back to the life is a journey theme in general. And I'm going to go back to another story about a roller coaster, which I talked about in Rosh Hashanah. So it's not actually really about a roller coaster. It's about a theme park, and Jonah was once again at the theme park, but this time it's really about me trying to find him, picking him up at the theme park. Okay, this was in about 4 or 5 years ago, Six Flags Magic Mountain in Southern California. He spent the day there, and my job was just to pick him up at the end of the day. I was coming from LA proper, and if you know anything about Los Angeles and picking someone else across freeways, there's a lot of traffic in LA. So you have to check the GPS for what's the best way to get there. So I put in my GPS Magic Mountain, and I set off to pick up Jonah. Well, the GPS had me veering off the freeway, and I find myself in some hills. I thought, that's a little bit odd, but it is LA, right? And, maybe the freeway was a parking lot. There were multiple accidents. Everything's completely shut down. It's taking me some back way across the hills. But then the hills turn into mountains, and then I'm on a dirt road, and I realize I am completely and utterly lost. And it's starting to get darker. I'm starting to get a little concerned. Now, I noticed, though, that there was a couple of motorcycles and a couple of trucks a mile back or so. And so I circled back around, and I got out of my car, and I asked the people who were there for help. I said, do you know how to get to Magic Mountain? And they said, you mean the theme park? I said, well, yeah. And they said, well, you got to get back to the freeway first. I couldn't see the freeway from where I was. I didn't know which one to put in the GPS. I'm surprised I even got GPS up there. And so they gave me very specific instructions, and I eventually got to Jonah about an hour and 15 minutes late. See, the thing is, I didn't know this. There's actually a real mountain in Southern California called Magic Mountain. It has like a 5,000-foot elevation. And if you put that in the GPS, that's where it takes you to. Okay, you have to put Six Flags Magic Mountain if you want to get to the right place. But I realized it was kind of a metaphor, right? Like so many things. You see, when it comes to the journey, most of the time, your GPS will get you exactly where you need to go. And by your GPS, I mean your education, your Torah, what your parents have taught you, your intuition. Most of the time, your GPS will get you right there. But every so often on your journey, you're going to get lost. And you're going to need to actually ask human beings to help you. You're going to have to seek help from the community. And that in turn reminded me of the parable of the Hasidic Rebbe Chaim of Tzanz, who tells the story about a man who's lost in a forest. He's wandering for 3 days. He can't find his way out. But on the third day, he runs into another man. And he says, "My brother, I'm lost in the forest. I've been wandering for 3 days. Can you help me find the way out?" And he says, "I hate to tell you this, but I too am lost. I too have been wandering the forest for days. I can't find the way out, but I can tell you this. The ways that I've tried so far, they are not the ways. But perhaps together we can find the way out together." Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination. And life is a journey. And journeys, like roller coasters, are filled with light and dark, with ups and downs, with highs and lows, with long, slow climbs and steep, deep drops, smiles and screams, fear and fun and faith. And as we navigate together as a community the next steps of our journey in 5782, we know it is still not going to be an easy journey. But I hope that every one of you knows that indeed you will never walk alone. Af pa'am lo levad. You are never alone. Gamar chatima tova. Amen. All right, our service will now continue with Musaf. We invite Hazanit Yael Krieger to come back up once again. And we are, so I've got to get you the right page here. Some of you will undoubtedly be there before I am. All right, it's page 313 with the Chatzi Kaddish. And we're going to, I think the Chatzi Kaddish is on 313. We're going to rise, and what we're going to do is
298.
Oh, 298 is the Chatzi Kaddish. And then we're going to go right to 313. We're going to do the Amidah aloud only, but we're not going to stop at the Kedusha. We're going to keep going with lots of the selections. All right, here we go. Please rise.
Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabba beyom divrach kirutei ve'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon Uvechaye dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala uvihizman kariv Vimeru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam u'olmei olmaya Yitbarach יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה, ויתהלל שמי דקודשא, בריחו. לילה, לילה, מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ביעלמה, ויאמרו אמן. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibur v'Anorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh HaKol, V'zocher Chastei Avot, U'mevi Goel Lifnei V'neihem, L'man Shemo B'Yahava. Misod Chachamim Unevonim Umilemed Dad Mevinim Heftech Afi B'tfilah V'tachanunim Lechalot Uchanein Pnei Melech Malei Rachamim Mochev V'solech Lavonim Zachreinu lechaim, melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chotvenu b'sefer hachayim, lemancha Elohim chayim, melech ozer Moshiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ufoked Sarah. Ata Kippur l'olam Adonai mechayim etim ata harav le'oshia. Mechalkel chaim bechesed, mechayim etim berachamim rabim, somech noflim v'rofeh cholim, u'mahatir asurim. ומקיים אמונתו לישני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, מי כמוך אהב הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
Amen. We're on page 315 for the Untitled Chapter. We invite Jacob and Celia Hill to open the ark.
ובכן ולכת לקדושה, כי אתה אלוהינו מלך מלכי וסולח. ונתנה תוקף קדושת היום, כי הוא נורא ואיום. ובוא תנשא מלכותך, וייכון בחסד כיסאך, ותשב עליו באמת, ותשב עליו באמת. אמת כי אתה הוא דיין ומוכיח ויודע ואין, וכותב וחותם וסופר ומונה. ותזכור כל הנשכחות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ומעליו יקרב וחותם יד כל אדם בו, ובשופר גדול ייתקע, וכל דממה דקה יישמע. ומלאכים יחפזון, וחיל רדה יוחזון, ויאמרו הנה יום הדין, לבכות על צבא מרום בדין, כי לא יזכו בעיניך בדין. וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרון, כבקרת רועה עדרו, מעביר צאנו תחת שבטו. כן תעביר ותספור ותמנה ותבכור נפש כל חי, ותחתוך קצבה לכל בריאה, ותכתוב גזר דינם. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. כמה יעבורון וכמה יברהון, מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי בקיצו ומי לא בקיצו, מי באש ומי במים, מי בחרב ומי בחיה, מי ברעב ומי בצמא, מי בצמא. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. מי ברש ומי במגפה, מי בחניקה ומי בהשכילה, מי בהשכילה. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. מי ינוע ומי ינוע, מי ישקיט ומי יטורף, מי ישלב ומי יתייסר, מי יעני ומי ישיר, מי יושבע ומי ירום, ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירין את רוע הגזירה.
And we're reading this in English once again. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many will pass on, and how many will be born? Who will live, and who will die? Who will live a long life, and who will come to an untimely end? Who will perish by fire, and who by water? Who by sword, and who by beast? Who by hunger, and who by thirst? Who by earthquake, and who by plague? Who will be strangled, and who will be stoned? Who will be at peace, and who will be troubled? Who will be serene, and who will be disturbed? Who will be tranquil, and who will be tormented? Who will be impoverished, and who will be enriched? Who will be brought low, and who will be raised up? But teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah have the power to transform the harshness of our destiny. Each person's origin is dust, and each person will return to the earth having spent life seeking sustenance. Scripture compares human beings to a broken shard, withering grass, a shriveled flower, a passing shadow, a fading cloud, a fleeting breeze, scattered dust, a vanishing dream. And you are the sovereign living God, ever present. We turn to page 317 for the Kedusha.
כסוד שיח שרפי קודש המקדישים שמך בקודש דרי מעלה דרים דרי מטה ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech haaretz kevodo.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech haaretz kevodo. Kevodo, Malei olam, Mishartav, Shoalim zelazeh. Aye, mekom kevodo, leumatam baruch yomeru.
Kevod Adonai mimkomo.
Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo, mimkomo. Hu yifem berachamim veyachonam. Ham yachadim shemo erev avoker bechol yom tamid pamayim be'ahava shema omerim shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu. Hu Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu, Berachamav Shenit, Leinei Kol Chai, Liot Lachem Le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adir Adirenu, Adonai Adonenu, Madir Shimcha Bechol Haaretz, Vay Adonai Lemelech Al Kol Haaretz, Vayom Hahui Adonai Echad Ushmo Echad. Uvidivrei kodshecha katuv le'mor, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Yichzion, Ledor vador. vador nagiko lecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nagtish v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush leolam va'ed ki hamelech gadol v'kadosh ata.
323, the top of the page. 323.
Kadosh ata v'nora shemecha v'lo ami baladecha kakatuv v'yigmar Adonai tzvaot b'mishpat ve'el hakadosh nikdash b'tzdaka baruch ata Adonai hamelech hakadosh.
Amen. We're jumping now to the other great Aleinu. This is the one where the ark is open and you can lie down on the ground completely prostrate, and we're going to call upon the Tesslers to open the ark. 325, the second paragraph.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol late gedula leotze bereshit shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים. לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
We turn now to page 346 for Shema Kolenu. And actually, go ahead and leave. This is an ark opening too, so just stay up there. And
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Chutz v'rachem aleinu v'kabel berachamim uvratzon et tefilateinu hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh yameinu kekedem Al tashlicheinu Al tashlicheinu milfanecha veruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu al tashlicheinu Al tashlicheinu le'et zikna kichlot kocheinu
we can close the ark now. You can be seated, although not for very long. 347, Ki anu amecha.
Eloheinu Avotenu Selach Lanu Mechalanu Kapelanu Ki anu Amecha Ve'ata Eloheinu Anu Vanecha Ve'ata Avinu Anu Avadecha Ve'ata dodeinu anu ke'alecha ve'ata chelkeinu anu nachalatecha ve'ata goraleinu anu tzonecha ve'ata roeinu anu charmecha ve'ata notreinu anu fulatecha ve'ata yotzreinu anu rayatecha ve'ata dodeinu anu segulatecha ve'ata keroveinu anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu anu mamirecha ve'ata mamireinu anu azefanim ve'ata rachum ve'chanun anu kashay oref ve'ata erech apayim anu melei avon ve'ata melei rachamim anu yamenu ketzeh lo hover ve'ata ushnotecha lo yitamu Eloheinu ve'avotenu tavo lefanecha tfilatenu ve'al titala mitchinatenu shein anachnu azefanim ukshei oref lomar lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'hei avotenu tzadikim anachnu v'lo chatanu aval anachnu v'avotenu chatanu.
Rise once again for the first of the confessionals, Ashamnu. The acrostic, all in the plural, of course, as mentioned earlier. We take our fists and beat it gently into our hearts. After we get to the Al Chet, as soon as the Al Chet is done, Kohanim and Leviim, you will need to go into the sanctuary for washing if you were participating in the ritual of the Kohanim. You're going to go in the door, which is sort of by where Jacqueline is, or where Rena is now. That's where you're going to go in. But as soon as the Al Chet's done, that's when you get up and please go in there. For now, 348, Ashamnu.
Ashamnu,
Ashamnu,
Bagadnu,
Bagadnu,
Gazalnu,
Gazalnu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dovi,
Evinu,
Evinu,
Hirshanu,
Hirshanu,
Zadnu,
Zadnu,
Hamasnu,
Hamasnu,
Tafalnu Sheker,
Tafalnu Sheker,
Yatznura,
Yatznura,
Kizavnu,
Kizavnu,
Latznu,
Latznu,
Maradnu,
Maranu,
Niatznu,
Niatznu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Hashanu,
Hashanu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Oref,
Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu,
Titanu,
Sarnu מצוותיך ממשפטיך טובים ולא שבה לנו. לתצדיק הכל הבעלינו כי אמת עשית ואנחנו הרשענו.
Page 351, first stanza in Hebrew, second stanza in English, third stanza back in Hebrew.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך באימוץ הלב.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבלידה.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בביטוי שפתיים.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בגלוי ובסתר.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדת ובמרמה.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בדיבור פה.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהונאת קריאה.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בהרהור הלב.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבעידת זנות.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בווידוי פה.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזלזול הורים ומורים.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בזדון ובשגגה.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחוזק יד.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בחילול השם.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בטומאת שפתיים.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בטיפשות פה.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו.
We've sinned against you by throwing off all restraint. We've sinned against you by rashly judging others. We've sinned against you by plotting. Wait, am I in the wrong? Sorry about that. Back on 351. We've sinned against you through denial and deceit.
And we have sinned against you by ignorance.
We've sinned against you by clever cynicism.
And we have sinned against you by speaking badly of others.
We've sinned against you by the way we do business.
We have sinned against you in our eating and drinking.
We've sinned against you by greed and oppressive interest.
We have sinned against you in arrogance.
We've sinned against you in everyday conversation.
We have sinned against you through conspiratorial purposes.
We've sinned against you through condescension.
We have sinned against you. Ve'al kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mechalanu, kaper lanu. Ve'al kulam Eloha selichot, selach lanu mechalanu, selach lanu mechalanu, kaper lanu. Al chet שחטאנו לפניך בפריקתו.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בפלילות.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצדיעת ריאה.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בצרות עין.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בקלות ראש.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בקשיות עורף.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בריצת רגליים להרע.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך ברכילות.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשבועת שווא.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בשנאת חינם.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתשומת יד.
ועל חטא שלנו לפניך בתימהון לבב.
ועל כולם אלוהי סליחו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו.
Turn to page 354 now, and you can be seated. 354, Kohanim and Leviim.
ואתה רחום מקבל שבים ואל תשוב מראש הבטחתנו, ועל התשובה איננו מייחלות לך אלוהינו ואבותינו, מחל עוונותינו ביום הכיפורים הזה, מחבר פשעינו וחטאותינו מנגד עיניך. כאמור אנוכי הוא מוכב שך למעני, וחטאותיך לא אזכור. ונאמר, מחיתיך פשעיך, וכענן חטאותיך, שובה אלי כי גאלתיך. ונאמר, כי ביום הזה יכפר להם לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם, לפני אדוני תטהרו. אלוהינו ואבותינו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך. סבנו מטובך, ושמחנו בשועתך, וטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת. כי אתה סלחן לישראל ומחלן לשבטי ישורון, בכל דור ודור. ומבלעדיך אין לנו מלך מוחל וסולח אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני. מלך מוחל וסולח לעוונותינו ולעוונות עמו בית ישראל, ומעביר אשמותינו בכל שנה ושנה. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל. ויום הכיפורים רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל תפילתם, והשב את עבודה לדביר ביתך, ואישי ישראל תפילתם, באהבה תקבל ברצון, ותהי לרצון תמיד. עבודת ישראל עמך, ותערב עליך תירתנו, ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים, ושם נעבודך ביראת ימי עולם, ושנים קדמוניות. ברוך אתה אדוני, שאותך לבדך ביראה נעבוד. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, לאבותינו לבד. צור חיינו מגן הישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור נודה לך נספרתך, על חיינו מסורים בידיך, ועל נשמותינו בנולך. אנו ועל נפלתך של חדר וגסוריים. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, ורחם כי לא תמוך חסדיך, לעולם קיווינו לך. ואי כולם יפרח בתרומם, שמך מלכנו, תמיד לעולם ועד. אבינו מלכנו, זכור רחמך, וכבוש כעסך, וכלה דבר וחרב ורעב. ושבי ומשחית ועוון, ושמד ומגפה ופגרה, וכל מחלה, וכל תקלה, וכל קטטה, וכל מיני פרעניות, וכל גזירה רעה, ושנאת חינם, מעלינו, ומעל כל בני בריתך. וכתוב לחיים טובים כל בני בריתך, וכל החיים יודוך סלע ויעללו את שמך באמת, האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך ולחנה להודות.
The Kohanim will now come out. Please rise.
Eloheinu v'le'avotenu barcheinu b'bracha mishuleshet b'torah הכתוב על ידי משה עבדך, המורה מפי אהרון ובניו, כהנים עם קדושך כאמור. I did that. Yeah.
Did you say the blessing yet? No? Okay. So now do the rest. Oh, okay. Oh, wait 1 second. Sorry. That's no, yeah, you're ready.
I haven't, they're going to say the bracha?
Sorry, 1 second. So go back and forth now. Okay, sorry.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך יישא אדוני פניו אליך ויעשה לך שים שלום בעולם וכתובה ברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד באור פניך כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו תורת חיים ואהבת חסד וצדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים בשלום וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך בספר חיים ברכה בשלום ופרנסה טובה ניזכר וניכתב לפניך אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום ונאמר כי וירבו ימיך ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים לחיים טובים תכתבנו אלוהים חיים כותבנו בספר חיים ככתוב ואתם הדבקים באדוני אלוהיכם חיים כולכם היום.
Please rise for Hayom as the ark is open. We call upon Marvin and Sandy Shotland to open the ark for this prayer. 358.
Hayom te'amseinu, amen. Hayom tevarcheinu, amen. Hayom tegadleinu, amen. Yidrashenu Letova. Amen.
Amen.
Hayom Tichtevenu Lechayim Tovim. Amen. Hayom Tishma Shavatenu. Amen. Amen. Hayom Tekabel Berachamim Uratzon Et Tefilatenu. Amen. Hayom Titmechenu Bimin Sirkecha. Amen, 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 amen.
The ark is closed and we can be seated.
Kayom hazet vienu sasimus mechem b'vinyan shalem kakatuv al yad v'hiyecha v'aviotim el har kodshi v'simchatim b'veit filati ki veiti beit fila yikareh l'chol amim utzedaka uvracha v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom yeh lanu l'chol Yisrael ad ha'olam Baruch atah Adonai Oseh HaShalom.
Amen. Kaddish Shalem, 359.
Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Be'alma divra chirute ve'yamlich malchute v'chayechon ve'yomechon u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'gala u'bizman kariv ve'imeru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shemei Rabba mevorach le'olam olmei maya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesh abrichu le'ela le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata Dahamihiram be'oma ve'imeru amen.
Amen.
Tikabel seloton uvoton chol Yisrael kadam avuhon divishmaya ve'imeru amen. Yehei shalom ara min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Amen.
Yasher Koach. So Yasher Koach to Yael Krieger, our Chazanit. Yasher Koach to John Golding, who led us in Shacharit, to all our Torah readers and Haftorah readers, to our Kohanim, to our streamer, sound, everything, arranger of everything we do to go out into the internet, Josh Mailman, and Yasher Koach to our incredible staff. I know it's very odd, but this is how actually the Yom Kippur morning service ends, even in normal times. There's no Aleinu Mourner's Kaddish. It ends with Kaddish Shalem. It reconvenes with Mincha 5:30 today. We won't be doing the Eila Ezkara martyrology service this year or the service of the Kohanim, of the Kohen Gadol. We won't be doing either of those things. There is a Zoom study session, I believe, right now, or maybe it's at 1:30. I can't remember whether. 1 o'clock. So you're late, which means, which is my fault, or our fault, as I should have said. I knew in my head I changed it to 1:30, but I didn't actually do that in reality. So sorry, Rabbi Berlin, you're going to have some latecomers, I assume. And anyway, have an easy fast, Gemar Chatima Tova, and it's wonderful to see you here today.